Hi everyone, today's ERQ is evaluate two research methods used in the study of brain and behavior in the biological approach. So that means first you need to evaluate. This command term evaluate means you need to write the strengths and the weaknesses of what? Let's go back to the question on research methods. So that means you need to write two studies from biological approach and whatever research methods have been used in these studies, you need to evaluate and write the strengths and weaknesses of these research methods that are used in the study. I hope you understood. Let's start writing the ERQ. Here is the ready-made answer for you. See how to write and what to write in this ERQ. Let's start. So the first paragraph is the introduction that goes like this. The biological approach argues that human behavior has physiological origins and that biology should be taken into account when studying human beings. Psychologists use multiple research methods to investigate how environmental factors interact with biological systems in both animals and humans. Two research methods are used in this approach are laboratory experiments and case studies. So now I have given the introduction where I have told about the brain and the behavior, that is the biological approach, and I have also mentioned the research methods. So two methods I'm going to explain. One is lab experiment and case study. So these are the two I'm going to evaluate in next paragraphs. So my second paragraph goes like this. The purpose of using lab experiments in biological approach is for the researchers to establish a causal relationship between two variables, the independent and the dependent variable. Experiments are based on hypothesis testing, that is making a measurable and testable hypothesis and then seeing it if the results of the study are statistically significant so that they can reject the null hypothesis. In addition, an experiment must contain at least one group that receives a treatment, the manipulation of an independent variable, and a control group does not receive the treatment. In a true experiment, participants are randomly allocated to conditions. So what I have done here is I have given a specific knowledge that what are lab experiments and how it is held, what are the features of lab experiment. So I've given a brief about one of these research methods. Now I'm going to give a supporting study from biological approach that has lab experiments in it so that it's an appropriate supporting study. It goes like this. Rogers and Kessner conducted a lab experiment with the aim to determine the role of a neurotransmitter acetylcholine in spatial memory formation. There are multiple acetylcholine receptors in the hippocampus that play a role in the consolidation of memory. Firstly, the researchers had mice run a simple maze to find food that was placed in one of the two corners. After having run the maze, but before memory could be consolidated, the mice were injected with one of two chemicals into their hippocampal region. The first group was injected with a scopolamine, which blocks the acetylcholine receptors and thus inhibits the response. The second group was a control one, given a placebo injection of saline solutions to make sure that getting an injection does not cause any change in memory. Thereafter, the two groups were previously located. The results show that the scopolamine group took longer and made more mistakes in finding the food, whereas the control group learned faster and made fewer mistakes. All in all, the findings indicate that the neurotransmitter acetylcholine may play an important role in the consolidation of spatial memory and retrieval. Now, as you can see that I have given the supporting study where I have made sure that this study has research method, that of lab experiment. Only then it will be relevant. Now the question says that I have to evaluate that research method. So that means I have to write the strengths and weaknesses of lab experiment. So my next paragraph goes like this. One of the most significant strengths of a lab experiment is that it has a highly standardized procedure, so the study can be replicated by other researchers and the reliability of the results can be further tested. Experiments also try to control extraneous variables and randomly allocate participants to conditions, which increases the internal validity, allowing for a cause and effect relationship to be established. On the other hand, they suffer from low ecological validity due to highly controlled environments, meaning that the results may not reflect behavior under normal conditions. It is also not always clear to what extent the results of animal research may be applicable to human beings, such as from rats to humans in the Roger and Kessner study. Now, same way the above pattern is repeated again. Now I will be giving a specific knowledge of what is a case study. So I'm going to give what a case study and what are the main features of the case study. So this is my next paragraph. It goes like this. Another research method in the biological approach is a case study. Case studies are comprehensive investigations of one individual with a particular brain abnormality or damage. Case studies provide situations that cannot be ethically reproduced by researchers in a laboratory under controlled conditions. They are also often carried out longitudinally to observe short-term and long-term effects, where the same variables are investigated in repeated and different types of observations over long periods of time. An independent variable is not manipulated in this type of research, and hence no causal relationship can be established. In addition, psychologists study the brain damaged patient by using triangulation. For example, more than one method researcher and different sources of data. Now I have given what is case study and what are the features of the case study. Now next I must write a supporting study that and make sure that has case study in it. So I am choosing this supporting study as my that I will be writing in my ERQ. It goes like this. Milner carried out a classic case study on HM on the role of the hippocampus in memory formation. HM sustained a serious head injury when he fell off his bicycle at the age of 7 and beginning from 3 years after his accident suffered from repeating epileptic seizures. With the approval of HM and his family, tissue from the medial temporal lobe, including the hippocampus, was removed in an experimental surgery on both sides of his brain. Although HM remembered his childhood very well and his personality seemed relatively unchanged after the surgery, he had suffered from anterograde amnesia, not being able to transfer new information from short-term memory to long-term memory. Milner longitudinally studied HM through different methods such as psychometric testing, direct observations, interviews, MRI scans, and cognitive testing. The researchers have found that HM could not acquire new episodic memories and semantic knowledge. However, procedural memories were not impacted. They have concluded that hippocampal region plays a significant role in memory formation. Now, since I have given the supporting study and I have given what are case studies and a supporting study that has a case study in it as a research method, now as per the demand of the question, I need to evaluate case studies. That means I need to evaluate the strengths and the weaknesses of case study and also link it with this particular study that I have given. So I am going to write my next paragraph like this. One of the strengths of case studies is that they collect rich data. Case studies collect data over a long period of time, accounting for both short-term and long-term effects on the patient's behavior. They also use a more holistic approach as opposed to experiments by looking at a range of behaviors rather than measuring a single dependent variable. In addition, the use of method triangulation increases the validity of the results. Nevertheless, generalizability is one of the most critical limitations of this type of research method. Case studies often study brain abnormality or damage that is unique to an individual, and for that reason, the observed results cannot be generalized to the behavior of all human beings. In addition, a causal relationship cannot be established as an independent variable is not manipulated in this type of research. Lastly, it might also be difficult for the researcher to acquire and verify information about the patient prior to his or her accident, which may otherwise be of some use when drawing conclusions. Now, as you see in this ERQ, I gave two research methods, talked about what are the research method and what are the features, and followed by the supporting studies, and then I evaluated those particular research methods. So that is how I complete my ERQ, and the last I'm going to wind up my answer with conclusion. So my conclusion goes like this. While laboratory experiments may be helpful for researchers to determine cause and effect relationships that can be tested for reliability through replication by other researchers, case studies may provide more unique and in-depth research into individual human behavior that could not be otherwise ethically reproduced. All in all, despite some of the method's weaknesses, psychologists generally attempt to use them together to investigate human beings in terms of the roots of physical processes and physiological origins. So here we are done with the ERQ. I hope you understood and how to write, what to write in this answer. If you have any queries, please feel free to write in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe because here you get all IB psychology material.